Good day, everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today we'll be talking about permission sets. If you remember in our previous lectures, we talked about profiles in depth. So profiles will actually controls what a user can see, what the user can do. For instance, the profile pretty much controls whether you have read access, or you can delete an account, or you can edit an account, or you can create an account. So profile pretty much controls everything in Salesforce. So you might wonder, why do we need a permission set, right, when you have profile? Well, so a user can only be assigned one profile, whereas you can assign a multiple permission sets to a user. Now, let me explain you in a context, right, why we think permission sets can be very important at a certain point of time. So let's assume that in your organization, right, you have a profile created for finance people, right, and that finance profile comprises of 4 users: user 1, user 2, user 3, and user 4, right? So let's say all of the users have access to opportunity, viewing an opportunity, creating an opportunity, and editing an opportunity, but none of them have access to delete opportunity, right? Now, for whatever reason, let's say user 4 out of that profile would love to have a delete opportunity request. Means that that user should be able to delete opportunity based on whatever policies the company has. They decided, okay, we would like to give user 4 a delete rights on opportunities, right? Now, before permission sets, what people used to do, or companies used to do, they create another profile with giving read and write access, as well as a delete access to an opportunity. That would have been the scenario a few years ago. But imagine the case if you would like to give an exception to different users. You will end up in having a lot of custom profiles, which is really not a great solution, right? So that's where permission sets comes in the picture. So the permission sets, what you can do is that you can create a permission set, and you can create a delete access to opportunity and assign that user. That's all you have to do. So let's dive in. So to go to the permission sets, go to the setup. So to reach here, you need to log into your org using your username and password, right? So let's go to permission set. I will open in a separate tab, and I will also open profile, just to walk you through the difference between profiles and permission sets. It's very important to understand both of them. So we are in a permission set, right? So so let me create a new permission set. Let's say I would love to create a custom permission, right? So I would keep for now the license as Salesforce, right? And I will click on yes, right? Right, so you will see these options here, right? And now you might wonder, this looks pretty similar, right, to profile. You're actually right. So this is my custom profile. Let's go into custom sysadmin, right? If you look here, right, this is a profile screen, right? So you have assigned apps, assigned connected apps, permissions, and if you go pretty much here, you will have similar options here, right? Now, you watch the difference here. Go to object settings, right? Now, under object settings, everything has no access. So whereas in profile, it's not the case. You will have a lot of default CRUD access, And now my objective here is to give delete access to opportunity, right? So just to demonstrate you, let's go to opportunity. You can see there's no access. And let's edit this object settings, and let's give delete access. Now watch here. The moment you give delete access, it enables a read and edit, because obviously it expects you to do these options before you delete it, right? When you enable the delete option, that's how the architecture of Salesforce is, and which makes sense. So save here. Now, so go back to object settings, and all right. So now what I've done here is that I have given a delete access to an opportunity, right? But I haven't assigned any users yet, so we'll do that in a minute. So you might wonder, right? So if the user, right, been assigned this permission sets, will it override the object settings where you can see most of them has no access, right, as compared to the profile? Now, that's not the case. It will not override. It will take the profile settings, and whatever you add, it actually extends the feature of your profile in simple terms. Right, so let's go to manage assignments. So you can either add a user, you can add multiple users. So for now, let me add test, right? And done. So now what happens is that now this user be given an exception saying that this user will have delete delete rights for opportunities. So to make it more clear, let me explain it again. So what permission set allows you to extend a functionality in simple terms. So profile, right? You have 4 users in a profile, which is great. And you would like to extend, or you would like to make an exception for one user. So instead of recreating a new profile with all the options, right, giving it, in our case, giving a delete access to opportunity, we have created a permission set with a delete access to opportunity and assign the user to this permission set. It's as simple as that, right? And as you know, that user can have only one profile, but you can assign multiple permission sets to the user based on your organization requirements and needs. Okay? All right, that's fantastic. Now, if you look at this app settings, right, there are a lot of options which is pretty much similar to profile, right? But when it goes to system settings, there's only one option, system permission. You have more options under profile, right? Login hours, login IP ranges. So a user logging into Salesforce based on the logging hours and logging IPs controlled by profile, whereas the permission set has no role in that aspect, right? I hope that's clear. So this is very handy feature, and permission sets is very important concept. If you understand this very well, you will know the benefit of or advantage of using permission sets, and it's a very powerful feature. I use that whenever I have to give a user an extra access or whatever. Because multiple profiles, right? You create a profile and then you keep on creating a lot of custom profiles just to cater for different users. It's going to be a nightmare to maintain, right? So instead, create a permission set, add how many users you wanted to add, and then it solves the problem. Okay, so now another thing I wanted to cover about the sharing settings. So also my apologies if you're hearing a noise because the weather has been crap. We're in autumn. in New Zealand, so it gets very windy. Sorry, I digress. So, okay, let's go to sharing settings. Right. Okay, so now before I dive into sharing settings, I wanted to talk about a few options here. Let me go to edit, right? Okay, so we have different options here: private, rewrite, rewrite, transfer, right? So when you make an object access private here, that means the owner of that object has the right for read, write, and create, and anyone underneath will not have any access to it or even lateral, right? Whereas the in a role hierarchy, the boss of somebody who owns this will have rights for similar rights to the person who owns it. Let's say, I'll give you an example, right? So you are a vice president of a, say, a sales department, right? Under you, you have sales executive, right? So, and under you, you have two different teams. One is the sales executive team, and another one is, let's say, marketing team, right? So, a lead created by a sales executive will be visible by the vice president, but the leads created by a sales executive will not be accessible to the marketing team because it's a private, right? So, and anyone below sales executive will not have an access to that as well. So you can find more information about when you go to help. It's very handy concept because that's where the sharing rules comes in the picture. And I'll show you what I mean by that. It just takes a while. Right, so this is about the default settings and limitations and all kind of stuff. So you can sharing default access. You can read about it. You see controlled by parent. See what does a private means. Only the record owner and the user in the role hierarchy can view edit, right? And public read only means all the user can view, report in the record, but no one can edit them. Only the owner can and the user above can do that. So for instance, like we have public read only, right? Suppose for instance, let me find you a better example. User, okay, public read only, consumption schedule, right? So consumption schedule means that the owner who owns this consumption schedule record will have access to read and edit, and someone above that hierarchy, right? But otherwise, apart from that, no one will have any edit access. They can view it, right? View the record, but they can't edit it. So, yeah, I mean, it's very important to understand this. Then public read write, anyone can read and write the information on the records, right, or on the objects. So, public read write and transfer. So this is only available for leads. So what I meant by that, I can show you. So you have in leads, right? Public read, write, and transfer, because leads can be transferred. So it's, if you look here, say only available for cases of leads. You can't have public read, write, transfer on other objects, right? So go through this help documentation, which is very handy, and it's very important you understand why we need this and why we're using it. And if you make it public, and that's where the sharing setting comes into picture. So if you are using, let's say we are talking about the leads, right? so as well as an account. So for most of the time, you will not have account or contact as private, because I just, for whatever reason, company decides to have an account and contact private. That's their company policy. But most of the case, it won't be. It will be, depends. It could be public read only or read write. Let's say in our scenario, account and contract, right, is private. So that means that a person who creates the account will have access to it, whereas the person who is lateral to him, say, not above him, will not have probably access to that, right? So I'll show you what I meant by that. So let's go to an account study. This is this is an important concept. So let's say I'll go here and look at account. So we'll open in a new tab, and we have something called sharing account, right? And the owner is Mark Wilson. That's the sysadmin, or sorry, the CEO of the company. And now you can see there is no sharing button here to check for it, right? So let me go to there's some of the things which is still not available in the Lightning. So let's go to the classic version. And so we go to account, right? So the first thing, and we go to the sharing account. Now when you click on sharing, now you see this user will have full access, and this is private, right? So now what I wanted to do, that to give this user, wait a second, user test access to this sharing account record, right? So the way we can do is that we can do the sharing setting, right? So now if you noticed, this specific user belongs to the Western sales team, right? So what I'm gonna do is that I will create a sharing rule to say that give this user belonging to all the users belonging to this role access to this specific account, right? So the way you do here is to scroll down. There is an account sharing rule. Let's click on new, and let's say sharing account. You can give whatever name you want based on your preference, but it's always good to have a meaningful name, right? So you can have based on record owner or based on criteria. So let's look at the criteria. So we have account name. Let's say I would like to give the Western, what's the name of that? Western sales team access to all the accounts created by Mark, which has a name starting with sharing, right? So starts with sharing, right? And so you can give roles and Western sales team, right? So you have public groups, roles, and subordinates, right? So I'll give it to roles, and default access read only. So if you wanted to give read write, you can give read write, right? And I will make it set. So it will take some time, right? So because it's doing a background process, so you can give it 5 minutes. So so I've created an account sharing rule. So we will go back to the same account and look at the sharing setting, right? So we will close. Okay, we'll go back to Lighting Experience, and we'll go back again. So this is very important concept, because if you wanted to give a record access to someone who does not fits under your role hierarchy permission model, and you wanted to give access to a certain account, certain records to certain individual, you can do that using sharing settings, right? So you can do not only for accounts, you can do for leads, you can do for opportunity, you can do for case, you can do for campaign, user, individual. There are a lot of options here. You can actually go through the documentation around it. It's very powerful concept to use it, because it's actually, because remember one thing, that with permission sets you can't share a record. Permission sets is for giving an access to an object, right? Because with permission sets you can say, okay, I would like to give delete access to certain users, right? But it will not stop, it will not enable certain records to be shared, right? That is done by sharing model or sharing settings, right? So that's because most of the time people confuse with, oh, we have permission settings, why do we need sharing settings? Well, they're both are different things, because permission settings will not control your record levels visibility. It only controls whether your users have, or to access to whether they can do certain CRUD operations or not, right? For instance, right? So yeah, so this is one of the important concepts, and it actually confuses many as well. When I started it, I used to get super confused, but yeah. So let's go back to the same record again, right? So let's go back to classic. For some reason, that some options of classic is still not available. Like, I can't find the sharing setting at the time of this recording, so probably they might include it in the future, but I don't know. But Salesforce, they do 3 releases a year. They might make up their mind if they wanted to include that option. But either way, sorry, I digress. So let's go to the accounts and go to sharing account. Let's go to sharing. Now you can see you have the user of this Western sales team have read-write access. So now the person from that users belonging to this team can do read-write on this particular account record, right? Which is fantastic. This is amazing, right? So that's one of the things we can do. So this is a very powerful concept. So if you wanted to read more about it, you can obviously go here using the help documentation. So Salesforce help is pretty good, and you can also check out on Trailhead. You can practice yourself how to do things using Trailhead, which is very useful and handy in my opinion. It's the best place to learn about Salesforce. Okay, so you can read about this documentation. It covers about sharing rules and sharing considerations, so exceptions to role hierarchy-based sharing and all kind of stuff you can see here, right? So yeah, so this is very powerful and handy features to remember. And yeah, I hope that you guys find this session valuable, because I know that security can be a bit tricky at times, right? But it's one of the core aspects of security as well. And we do have another things to cover today. That is the field level security. So I'll show you what I meant by field level security. So before we dive into the field level security, I just wanted to talk about a brief about reports and dashboards, right? So in Salesforce, let's go to your so we have reports and dashboards, right? So reports and dashboards, right? They get stored in the folder in Salesforce. So you can create a new folder, you can make it as a private. So this folder security is another aspect of Salesforce security as well. So I will cover reports and dashboards in the later course, and because reports is it's pretty simple concept in Salesforce, but at the same time very powerful. So since we are talking about security, right? So just wanted to touch briefly on these two things. So when we go to report, right? So you can see that all folders here. So this is the folder you created by me. So obviously I created it a long time ago, and the folders which I can share. So what you can do is that so I can create a folder and I can create a report on this folder, and then I can share the folder with whoever I want. So this is how the sharing works in the folders. So a very powerful feature. So I will cover in detail when I talk about reports. Just to give you an idea, we have folder level sharing as well in Salesforce. Similarly, it goes for the dashboards, right? So we have a dashboard, we have all the folders. All this dashboard is like collection of, in simple words, you can say dashboard of folders, right? Dashboards and reports, collection of a template that gets stored in the folder. It's, if you think that way, right? So you can create a new folder by going to new folder, and then you create a dashboard and point your dashboard to that folder, and you can share it. You know, it's pretty handy. Okay, right. So let's go back to profile again. So I just wanted to talk about some profiles. So let's go to custom profile, sysadmin profile, right? Now, let's go to object settings, and let's go to accounts, right? So you can see that until now we talked about CRUD access on object, right? Rewrite, create, rewrite, sorry, because it includes create and edit anyways. Right, now we have something called field permissions, right? So we have account name. So this is something to do with the field level. So for instance, if I wanted to give a read access to the account's name, right? I can, this is a read access. I can untick the edit access. So that will means, for instance, I'll give you just an example. Let's say I do not want to give read edit access to billing address, right? So I can untick it. So when you give so what happens is that only the billing address will be read only mode here. So this is one thing you can do here. And another thing is the actual field level security to make sure that the field is visible or not. So for that, we need to go to the objects of objects manager of each object, right? So I would like to cover this in detail when I talk about custom objects and objects, but for now, just to explain you the field level security, we need to go to the object manager, right? And since we are talking about account, which is one of an object, which is go to account here, right? And it just sometimes it just takes time, which is weird, right? Okay, so let's go to field and relationships, and let's go to one field, like let's say account source, right? And there's an option called set field level security. Let's go here. Now I can make this field invisible, right? So to every profile or to individual profile, and I can make it as read only here. So this is the one way you can do it. So yeah, you can do it from here. And let's say, I'll show you what I meant by that. Let's do an hands-on with that to make you more to understand what I meant by that. Let's go to account first. So let's go to account and let's go to sharing account. So we have rating, right? I don't want this rating to be visible here, right, for this profile. So we will search for rating. So you can search it here, which is very handy feature here, right? Go to set field level security, and so I will just go back here and I'll just turn it off for every user just to keep it simple, right? And I've saved it. Now let's go to account to see if it's visible. If it's visible, then we have a problem. Right, so now it's gone. So it took a while to disappear that, so we can see it's gone now. So that's how the field security works. Okay, let's put it back, that option here, right? So because we want that option to be visible, and let me put this back on. It takes a while for that org to the settings to kick in. So now that's why I was like, what happened? That setting, because I just turned it off and it's still there. So yeah, it will take a minute, sometimes a two, or sometimes 10 seconds. So it depends upon the speed of your org sometimes. Okay, let's go back to details. See, it's still not here, which is weird, right? Right, it's back now. So yeah, that's how the field security works. So it's pretty handy. You can, but you know, the way the turning off and turning on, it depends upon your org policies and settings. I mean, please understand that this will have implications. So before you do any of the changes, please check out with who are people involved in this, you know, with Salesforce platform in your company, because you might decide to turn off some ratings, right? And that might piss off a marketing person saying, well, person will say, oh, hang on a second, I was able to see the rating. Oh no, what happened to my rating? Who turned it off? Right? So you have to keep people into consideration. So, you know, depending upon how you make a decision in an organization, that's purely up to companies, right? So, yeah, so this is all what I wanted to cover pretty much. So I hope you find this valuable. Sorry if it's took long to explain. So, okay, let's have a recap. So what we cover, right? So today we talked about permission sets, right? And we talked about sharing settings, and we talked about field security, and we touched a bit on folder security setting as well. Permission sets, as you know, you can, well, one user can have multiple permission sets, right? And a profile user can be only assigned one profile. So, and we talked about sharing setting. If you wanted to give an access to a specific record, you can use the sharing setting, right? And then we talked about the folder security, where you can share the folders, like for instance, reports, dashboard, and there's email templates as well. We haven't talked about that. We will cover that in the later courses, right? So that's also gets stored in that folder, so you can share those using a folder security sharing model. And then we talked about the field level security. You can go to the object manager setting to turn off and turn on a field. And please keep one thing into consideration, that before you do that, please consult the respective teams in your organization, because it might upset somebody if you take off certain option from an object, right? So yeah, So I hope you find this valuable. So the main aim for me to cover this thing is to make you guys understand the basic, you know, architecture and basic functionality of Salesforce, because these are the basic things which you should know, even if you wanted to be a developer or an architect, right? So I'll be covering the entire Salesforce with respect to admin. Please keep in mind this is not an admin certification course. If you wanted to do admin certification course, check out Focus on Force or Trailhead. This will cover. I will cover pretty much what's there in admin, but I wanted to cover more than that, right? I wanted to talk about Apex in the later course once we're done with all point and click based concepts. I would like to cover integration. I would like to cover Einstein, which is very important, if very useful skill set to have. And I would also like to cover Conga reports. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about Conga. Conga is a template-based report. So you can generate a PDF report from a Word, from an Excel, from a PowerPoint using a template-based architecture, which is very cool. I mean, I use it every day in my workplace. So it's very powerful. You can do amazing, cool stuff. You can write SQL queries. I will also cover SQL query in the later course. So I wanted to make sure that everyone, learns Salesforce. It's an amazing platform out there. Let's educate everyone on Salesforce and get everyone to Salesforce. Sorry for being biased, but ever since I started working on Salesforce, I just got hooked to it. It's just amazing. Very stable platform. Everything's cloud-based. You don't need much software. You don't need pretty much anything to install Salesforce. All you need is a laptop or a tablet or a phone and a browser and internet connection. Yeah, you're good to go. All right. Sorry, I just don't want to give you a long speech on Salesforce, but yeah. Okay, so thank you everyone for attending today's session. So I hope you have an amazing day. Take care.